brings us to our next session, Creating a Winning Team, Mindset and Execution Excellence, a session not to be missed with former international cricketer Gary Kirsten, international cricket coach, leadership consultant, philanthropist, and entrepreneur. And conversing with him is Sumit Sood, Group Vice President and Head of APAC Global Logic, a Hitachi Group company. Now, may I invite Bimaljit Singh Bhasin, President, Skills and Careers Business, to set the context in the presence of Gary and Sumit. Over to you, Bimal.
Thanks, Dilip and Sumit and Gary. Thank you very much for joining us. Sumit, we won't go into the details of what happened to your wrist, but that's fine. So folks, this is the ending session of a 2-day customer event, and this year we had business and HR and learning leaders from about 300 odd organizations who joined us for this event. And I don't think we could have imagined or structured a better ending session. I say this for two most important reasons in my thinking. One, in the very opening session yesterday, our inaugural speaker, who was the CEO of a very large private bank in India, his opening lines are, I'm actually reading from the note, that that talent or teams are going to be the only differentiator that organizations will have, and teams which are focused on relentless, flawless, and seamless execution, right? And this is exactly the construct of your talk today. Teams which are focused on, have a winning mindset, but are also focused on execution excellence. Second, from the diversity of the discussions, yesterday we had another speaker from, if I can call it, the non-corporate world. We had a speaker from the world of cinematic arts, and she shared her story of self-transformation. Right? So that was an important dimension of self-transformation. And here we are in your session talking about building a winning team. With that, Sumit, I hand over the floor to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bimal. And Gary, welcome to the talk as well. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, depending upon what part of the world you are. Well, very interesting last 2 years, right? The evolving business landscape, the kind of complexity that we all have been facing, the digital adoption, COVID switching off and on, hybrid working, get back to office, don't get back to office, you can do this, you cannot do that. The great resignation, it's just been a, how do I put it? It's been a cauldron of eclectic things or ingredients, if you will, out there. And while all of this is happening, our end customers, they maintain their high expectations. They still demand better services than ever before. And enterprises are therefore seeing a massive ask from all sectors and fields to drive their growth agenda with technology adoption, right? And in order to do so, everybody is struggling in terms of getting the teams in place, or if they have the teams in place, then do those teams have the right mindset? Or if they have the right mindset, can they execute ably? How do you tackle fatigue? How do these enterprises tackle boredom, if you will? And given that we have business and people leaders from large organizations across this audience, I'm sure, Gary, they're going to be very, very keen to hear your journey from a cricketer yourself to an international coach to a philanthropist and an entrepreneur now. And you are someone who has helped create teams that not only had a winning mindset, but they could execute as well. So thank you for being here, and a very, very warm welcome.
Thanks, Sumit. It's great to be joining you and everyone on the platform today. And certainly a very exciting topic.
Excellent. So let's get started. Look, Indian at heart. I just cannot let go and cannot not start with this one. Give us some specific stories around the experience of making the Indian team ready for the World Cup, right? The 2011 Cup win was an historic win. What was the toughest part? I mean, we've always relished that win. A lot of us, I'm sure, got drunk that night. But we want you to reflect on what was the most difficult thing to achieve that. How was the journey?
That's quite a big question, Sumit, and probably a lot of unpacking to do. But The one thing I think, and we've spoken about it already, is that it was a very talented team already. You know, there were some great players in that team, but I don't think that necessarily guarantees any form of success in any environment you are. Yes, you need to have the talent, absolutely, but then it's how do you get the talent to fly in formation? I think that's really what the key is. And I think really, as simple as I could answer that, that was essentially what we were able to create with the Indian team. Is we had a group of very talented players who I didn't get the sense when I joined the team were flying in formation. And we needed to work out a way how we were able to fly in a way and execute our skills in a way where we were moving towards the same goal and a similar target, rather than, as we use the terminology in cricket, you know, were each one of those players representing the name on the front of the shirt or representing the name on the back of the shirt? And the front of the shirt was the Indian badge. You are playing for India. You are representing the country and the nation. And when we started to really unpack and understand what that meant, I think there was a general sense from the group that that was more relevant to them than the name on the back of the shirt, which was just them doing well for their own brand and for their own needs. And I think it was a journey we went on. I don't think it was something that you could, you know, have a session and put a whole lot of words on a flip chart on a wall and then walk out the room and say, now we're going to live like that. I think it was a journey that we needed to go on. I always enjoy that, Sumit, the terminology performance flow, where you start to work out how you need to do things every day as a group of people. And I think we started to shift our behaviors, the way we did things as people. We started to be a lot more aware of the things that we were never aware of as people. In other words, you are a professional athlete representing a huge amount of stakeholders in the performance of the group, and you need to behave accordingly. And I think we put those pieces in place. But in trying to answer your question, what was the toughest thing I dealt with? I think coming in as a South African into an Indian environment was, I probably had some preconceived ideas as to how I was going to lead, and those were thrown out the door quite quickly. So I spent the first 6 months of the job really just getting to understand the flow of Indian people, of the players, sorry, and how they wanted to operate and where they were, you know, going to be at their best. I think the one risk you can take as a leader is to come in and think that you are going to be the turnaround strategist and you're going to shake the tree and make things happen. And I made the mistake of trying to do that in my first week of the job, and my second week I changed track.
Excellent. That's actually very, very interesting, Gary, right? And for a lot of us, you know, in the corporate world, we have all gone through our journeys. I'm sure there are a lot of, you know, young managers out there who are going to be leading some large strategic things for their organizations at some point in time. Talk to me a little bit more about that piece, right? You as a player, as a very accomplished player, maybe at a much higher stature than a lot of those other youngsters in the team, and hence having your own way of doing things. But then at times, you know, letting, quote unquote, your wisdom or your way of thinking go and letting the team or adapting to them. What was that journey like for you as a human yourself, right? And were there not times when you felt, hey guys, what the heck? I know this better. I've been there, done that. Listen to me, as opposed to, you know, backing off.
Yeah. Well, look, Sumit, the one thing I despise in life, and there's not many things I despise, but the one thing I despise is someone who thinks that he can lead me or anyone else by title. And, you know, just because you are more senior, just because you hold a higher position, just because you have the parking lot closest to the entrance to the building, I need to respect you, and I need to listen to everything you say, and I need to follow you. I despise any environment like that, because I believe environments should be fluid enough that we can find the best place for talented people to thrive. So let me give you an example. When I arrived with the Indian team, I got to know Sachin Tendulkar really, really well. And one of the massive frustrations that he had was that his real talent and strength as a player was not being allowed in the previous environment to optimize itself. So the environment was restricting his abilities. And that was not in conversations that he had. That was him being told that that's what he needed to do. And I think you can run a serious risk when you create environments like that, because basically what you're saying is, if you don't do it my way, there is no other way. So we're either going to have success or not have success, but we're going to have success under my way. And my leadership style has always been around, let's all make a contribution to the greater cause, and then let the leaders lead, okay, under that greater cause, and with a shared learning experience where everyone gets a chance to give his view. And you asked a question around how do you integrate junior players and less senior players into any environment? Well, as we know, in any environment we walk into, senior players want to feel heard and junior players want to feel wanted.
Yeah.
You know, so by creating an environment where they feel that they can make a contribution to the greater cause, and it takes time. I don't think it just happens straight away. And where senior players feel that their voice will be heard and that their information and their IP is valuable to us. And that takes incredibly clever facilitation. I don't think it's easy just to set up an environment like that. I think the leadership skills need to be such that you can canvas all voices in the room, but still lead. And I say still lead because it's not about just allowing others to make decisions. Leaders need to make decisions, but you need to canvas the other voices in the room as well.
Excellent. I think that's a great point, right? Canvas voices, but still lead, still make the decisions, make sure people are heard and they understand why something that they are saying might not be relevant to the greater cause, if you will. Not a lot of people, especially accomplished people, and I'm sure I went through this personally in my early stages of my managerial career. Not a lot of people have a lot of patience for that. You develop patience over a period of time. What was that journey like for you to be able to listen to people, sometimes even, how do I say, went out, if you will, and not being judgmental about it, and then applying that into your workplace? I mean, this was your workplace, right? So
yeah, what
was that like for you?
Yeah, Sumit, I think that's a great point you make. And we live in an impatient world. We're looking for results all the time. Everything's about results. Everything's in sport. Everything's about the win-lose column. We know in IPL, you lose 2 games on the bounce, the heat's on. Everyone's on your back to say, why aren't you winning? Why aren't you getting the results that we expect you to get? And the one thing that I've learned through sport is that is the beauty of sport, is that it doesn't guarantee the result. You're not always going to win, but you can journey through life, and you can journey through the experiences that you have. So I always look at winning and losing as equal imposters. They don't define who I am as a human being. And I think you gain as much from winning as you do from losing. You probably gain more from losing, to be honest with you, because that's a time where we as human beings will close our mouths and open our ears.
Right.
And so I think we got our most learning as an Indian team through our losses. And we realized, hold on, maybe we need to look at doing things slightly differently. Or we need to say, you know what, we're actually on the right track. Let's hold our line because we believe in what we have strategized or what we decided how we want to play. So I think you need patience through that. I really do. I believe you need to take the blows. And I think one thing that being a professional coach teaches you, it teaches you to take the blows because there's a lot coming your way. You're going to have incredible frustrations. It's not a straight line sports performance. You need to move through the gears, plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. You're generally not going to have a plan A event. You know, it's not a linear journey, this. It is going to be very complex. We are going to ask you to make mature strategic decisions under pressure. You might need to adapt or be flexible to a match situation which would go completely against your skill sets, but because you're playing for the bigger purpose, we know that you can deliver on it. And those are the kind of players we're looking for. We're looking for intelligent players. I mean, earlier we spoke about talented people in your organization. You know, I want intelligent people in my cricket team. I want people that have that can be agile in their thinking. I want people to have not too much ego, you know, so that they can listen to someone who's challenging them on something. So I'm looking for those kind of people that you create a really robust environment where your leaders are allowed to make really good decisions based on the best thinking in the room.
Excellent. Excellent. I love the term. Thank you for that, Gary. But I love the term you said, take the blows, right? And I'm sure a lot of the leaders in this conversation would resonate with that. A lot of us carry numbers on our spreadsheets that we need to meet, targets to achieve. And there is constant pressure at various times, right? Again, for you as a player, as a celebrated player, moving into the coaching arena, and then taking the blows, if you will, sometimes as a team, sometimes as an individual, as the leader of the pack. Any experiences, any things that you would like to share that help condition you better for taking the blows? I'm sure there were days of self-doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right culture? There's a different culture, different, what do you say, wavelength to which this wave flows. Any advice? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I would say from the outset, and this has been something that has been very dear to me, is that if you are going through a challenging time as a leader, the performances aren't stacking up, you're under pressure. The most important thing that you do there is to shoulder the responsibility of the performance, and don't look to pass on judgment on subordinates or even peers, to pass on the responsibility of the performances to someone else because it might make you look better. And there have been some incredibly frustrating times where we've lost games of cricket based on a really poor, inadequate decision from a player that might have cost us a game. And it could have been very easy to publicly, and when I say publicly, even in a team meeting, to publicly or within a team meeting, to lay the blame of the performance on that particular individual. And I just find that if we allow ourselves to behave like that, you will lose the dressing room really quickly, because then you start to be governed by the results. You're governed by the win-lose. So when the team wins that game instead of loses it, who do you give the credit to in that situation? When the team loses that game that they should have won, who do you pass the blame on to? And I've always maintained, if I could just be really consistent as a human being through the wins and the losses, then the people that you are leading start to see your authenticity. They start to see that you're not in a great mood when the team wins, and you're in a really poor mood when the team does badly, that you are just the same human being. And I think that consistency is very, very important in leadership. So during my 3 years with the Indian team, I think I can count on one hand how many press conferences I did. And that was because that was not my way. I didn't sign up the job to go sit in press conferences. That's for the players to share in their glory of success. And it's for the captain to comment on poor performances. It was not my place to be standing on the parapets when the team did really well. And equally, not my place to be taking the bait of the external noise when the team's not doing well and starting to criticize individuals and teams. So we kind of dealt with that in-house, and I just was very much, and still am very much in-house, an in-house leader, not certainly stand on the parapets leader.
And that resonates very well. That resonates very well with level 5 leadership, Gary, right? Take the blows when the situation so demands, but ascribe success to your teams and let them bask in the glory of what's happening, and also empower them for accountability. So if the captain's standing out there on the podium answering the tough questions, he will go back thinking about what the unit needs to do to perform. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And if I could just add on to that, Sumit, I was very lucky to have MS Dhoni as a shared leader, and he was outstanding at dealing with the media. And very consistent through the wins and the losses. So very seldom would you hear him criticize a player in the media. And equally, very seldom would you see him, behaving as if he'd won every win that we got. He had won the World Cup. You know what I mean? He was just like a very consistent human being.
Correct.
And I think people take great comfort in knowing that that's how their leader behaves.
That's a great point. That is a great point, Gary. And I do remember the press conference at the end of the World Cup, and somebody asking Dhoni about Gautam Gambhir's shot, and was that a rash shot? And he said, well, you know what? He's a senior player. He understands his role, and a century in a World Cup final, that was his choice to make. And which is nice, right? You let people, you respect people's maturity and their decision-making process.
Yeah,
and that takes me to a very interesting. I would love to pick your brains on it. Under high pressure situations, people tend to create, both individuals and teams, they tend to create some barriers around themselves, right? And that always prevents a unit from delivering peak performance. What are some of the biggest mental barriers that you have seen people put around them, especially such talented and high octane people?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Sumit, and I guess it's around fight or flight, and we put those barriers around ourselves when we are threatened, and then we look for a way to protect ourselves in that space. And I found that in my experience, if a team is playing cricket like that, you're going nowhere. And if an individual is playing cricket like that, you're going nowhere. So whose responsibility is it to try and create the environment where that doesn't happen? And that is the journey of coaching. That's why I coach, because I want to be in those situations where we can make really good decisions to progress the team and to progress where we want to go to. Where are we heading here? And what are the blocks that we need to add to the flywheel, or what are the clicks we need to add to the flywheel, that allow us to reach our next level of performance? And that's ultimately why I do the job. I think in many times I've found in sport, I've taken one step forward and sometimes two steps back, and then you create you set up an intervention, and then you think, okay, you're on your way, and then you take another step backwards. Now you've got to go, do I trust the process? Do we keep building on what we have tried to set up? Do we believe in what we've done? Or do we go into crisis management, where we say, okay, that didn't work, so let's go to the next thing? And I've seen many, many IPL franchises that I've had the privilege to work with. I've seen many teams, when they're under the pump, they go into crisis management. What do? They change a team, they fire the coaches, they move on to the next best thing, because I think that the next best thing is going to bring them the glory in the end. And you need to stick to your talent. You need to give it time. You need to be patient, and you're probably going to have to go through a really tough time before you get on the other side. I've always been fascinated by recruitment. I mean, if you're recruiting a leader to a position and he has a bad first year in your business, you know, do you get rid of him because you think he's not good enough, or do you look at yourself and say that was a bad recruitment? And often what we do is we say, oh, well, let's move on to the next person. I mean, we see it in the English Premier League. They fire coaches left, right, and centre. And I'm going, well, what does your organization need in their leader? And if you can find that person, back him, because it's going to come right, but it might take time. But just you recruit that guy because you think he is the guy that is best suited for your environment, and you've done your referencing, and that is the best man that you can get for your environment. Now you need to let time unfold for his system to be able to work.
Excellent. No, that's great advice. And you know, you spoke about people and the value system and everything, right? What about the emotional value system? Humans are inherently extremely emotional people, right? And especially in today's world where we are working at a distance, and I'm sure even in from your time as a player, as a coach, and as an entrepreneur, there are many times you're connecting with people remotely, right? And or even in person. Is there a way or a routine you followed to build up that emotional value system for the common purpose, or was it inherently professional, mercenary? This is what you got to do. You're an athlete, and go do that, or was there an emotional value system that you tried to bring into the team?
Yeah, and I think yes. So to answer that, the short answer is yes. That is absolutely very important. How you get there, I think, is the real where the real gold sits, I suppose. I think that takes time. I think every leader needs to genuinely understand the flow of the environment. So, for example, you know, we had a very different energy when I was working with the Indian team compared to the South African team. The energy was very different, but you can still get to the same outcomes, you know, but you need to understand the energy. You need to understand how people want to work in this organization. So a nice small example is that we were really happy with the rotational batting order in 50 over cricket in the Indian team, pretty much through the 3 years that I was with the team. When I introduced that into the South African team after I'd worked with the Indians, they hated it. They said, there's no ways we can rotate. I need to know what number I'm batting the night before, please, so that I can prepare accordingly. So I think understanding the emotional ebbs and flows of a team is really important. You as a leader need to know where you feel that there's an opportunity to emotionally share into the group, because I think emotion can add value. One of my most favorite books is called The Chimp Paradox, which I read many, many years ago. I forget who the author is, but it's quite a wacky title. So if someone typed in The Chimp Paradox, you would get to it. But it really talks a little bit about how the emotional side of our brain and how the logical side of our brain works, and where the emotional side of the brain is really beneficial, but where the emotional side of the brain is a real stumbling block as a human being. And I find it fascinating because I think sometimes we spend too much time on the emotional side of our brain and too little time on the logical side, you know. And I find I'm probably not emotional enough, and I get criticized a lot for that. And then I always say to people, well, then I'll make sure that I get quite an emotional assistant coach. So I would do quite a lot of work with Ashish Nera, and the two of us, he's quite emotional and I'm very kind of unemotional, and we actually a great combination, but as people in terms of leaders. So I think it's really understanding the environment and what the requirements are of that environment.
Excellent. And as a business person, as you moved, you know, in addition to your coaching career, as you started, you know, or your own journey as an entrepreneur, as a business person, you have experienced handling a lot of uncertainty, right? Any advice to the business community to, you know, what should they be thinking of as they go through the current crisis of dealing with distributed workforces, clients you're not able to break bread with and still want to build up a connect? Any learnings that you would like to pass on?
Well, I've walked an interesting journey. I played professionally for 17 years. I've been a coach for 20 years now, working in a lot of different team environments. And then for my sins, I started my own academy business here about 10 years ago. And then madly so, I decided to become a real serial entrepreneur and started up an online coach education business about 2 years ago. So I'm kind of walking that journey at the moment. The only piece of counsel that I could give in that space is the one thing that I've really, really enjoyed. I'm 54 years of age now, is that I'm absolutely and completely motivated by working with young people. And all the guys that I work with in our online business, we've got consultants in the business. We've also got some full-time founders in the business. There are 5 of us as founders. I just can't believe how invigorating and motivating it is to listen to people who have a very different view on the way I was brought up in life, but yet with the same determination, drive, and work ethic that I would have had. So it is great to be learning from these guys in terms of looking at life slightly differently, and to be leading, millennials and leading people in a slightly different way, very different to the way I was brought up. I was brought up in the 80s and 90s, and you just shut up and get on with your job and don't talk until someone asks you a question. Now these young guys, they want to be heard. They want to be heard. They want a voice. They've got some good thinking. So I think what I've had to do a little bit as a entrepreneur and as an older statesman, I suppose, is I've needed to unlearn a lot of what I learned. And I'm reading a fantastic book at the moment by Adam Grant called Think Again. And it talks into that. It talks into your preconceived ideas as to what is right and wrong in the world. How can we challenge you on that? How can you look at it slightly differently? How can you change your views on something? And I'm finding that in my world of professional coaching, I'm needing to unlearn a lot of the things that I thought were the right way to go. So to be in that learning environment and that growth mindset, it's the most exciting place to be, man.
Excellent. Of course, absolutely. And it's amazing that you talk about unlearning things. And there's a very interesting book. It's called The Future Shock. I'm sure you have heard of it. Alvin Toffler, and he wrote that. And he said that the biggest levers for success in the 21st century are going to be the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's a mantra that I live by myself as well, and it's just amazing. Excellent. Gary Kirsten Foundation. Talk to us a little bit about that, right? Why did you even think of it? We know some of the work that it does, but what was the driver? What made you work towards that?
Yeah, Sumit, thanks for the question. It's a simple answer. I've been a cricket practitioner professionally since I was 19 years old. I'm now 54, and I've actually been involved in the game of cricket since I was 4 years old. So it's given me much opportunity, and it's given me much in my life. And we live in a country where there has been a great divide, between those that have opportunity and those that don't. So the foundation was set up to access environments where the opportunity to practice, the opportunity to have nice equipment, the opportunity to have a coach, the opportunity to have a great facility to be able to practice on, the opportunity to be able to play matches, was available to those players with talent who would generally not have ever been given that opportunity. So that was how we started out 7 years ago, and we started with building some concrete net at 5 schools in one of our poorest townships in Cape Town. And we've now about 6 years later now, we've now built a cricket center of excellence in one of the township schools where they've got facilities that rival any facilities in South Africa. They've got a full artificial cricket field. They've got an indoor center, and they've got paid professional coaches working with them. So they've now been given that opportunity. So it's incredibly exciting. You know, it's a small space we work in, but we are seeing some fantastic results of young players who've only been playing the game for a few years, going on to play at high levels and play not necessarily professionally yet because they're still kids, but certainly playing representative cricket.
Excellent. That's just amazing, Gary, and good luck to you with that. I wish great success to the foundation. I think that's the best thing that we can do whenever our careers or whenever the universe has given us something, to the ability to go and give back is, I think, one of the most gratifying experiences. So excellent. That's great to hear.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, we took a team to the 2019 World Cup under 13 team, and our next destination that we are targeting is India and the IPL. And
excellent.
And to get these kids to have the opportunity to go watch IPL matches. I mean, they went to watch the World Cup matches. It was like they were staying in these magnificent hotels in the UK, and they were playing matches on beautiful cricket fields. And we would like to give a couple of these kids, certainly in under 13 group, a very similar opportunity in India, because cricket is such a rich part of India. And for these kids to see what it looks like in India would be an incredible privilege for them. Amazing.
I'll come back a little bit to the team management part of things, Gary. Maybe one or two things, and then I think there's a bunch of questions piling up as well. How as a coach, what was your biggest, not biggest, how do you help people overcome their shortcomings, right? How do you, when you have sometimes bloated in our head sort of a superstar, thinking that, hey, I'm the next best thing to slice bread. And then as a coach, there's a shortcoming and there's something that the person needs to work on. What was the way that you worked with people and said, hey, you know what, this is something that's going to get you into trouble on the field. You need to work on this. And how did you deal with the specific first resistance that always comes back? No, I know my stuff.
I think we spend as leaders too much time instructing and too little time facilitating a journey of someone. The reason why we spend more time instructing is because we are deemed to know the answer and they don't know the answer. So we'll tell you. But we all learn slightly differently, but the best way for people to learn and to become the best versions of themselves is if they are making a contribution in the entire learning cycle. So, they're the ones that are playing, they're the ones that need to reflect, they're the ones that need to plan for the next game, they're the ones that need to practice, and then they go play again. That is the learning cycle in cricket. What we as leaders and coaches have done is we've said, you know what, you go practice and play, we'll plan and prepare. And our skill as coaches is to make sure that the player himself is doing the reflecting, is doing the planning and the preparation. And I think one of the skills we as leaders can really work on is our ability to facilitate conversation, to be really curious around a player, to get to understand him at a slightly deeper level, to not jump in with an opinion too early, to allow the player to find the answer himself through very clever asking of questions, to use the right kind of questions. If someone asks me a question, so why did you play that shot? I'm going to put my defense walls up straight away. Why is a very dangerous way to start a question, because it's accusatory. What it's doing is it's saying, I'm going to ask you this question. So why did you do this? Because I've got an opinion on what you did. So I want to know what your answer is, but I'm telling you that I've got your opinion. That's why I start the question with why.
Interesting.
So maybe instead of saying, why did you play that shot? Maybe another way of doing it is, what did you think about that shot? So now by asking it that way, it's not accusatory. What you're doing is you are asking the player to reflect. And then the next question would be, so what would you do differently the next time? That is to plan. And then the next question would be, say, do you want me to set that up in the nets for you to prepare and then go play?
Excellent.
So I think there are many ways that we can deliver information. There's a famous quote by a guy by the name of Bill O'Brien who made the comment. He said, the quality of any intervention is directly related to the interior condition of the intervener. And the beauty of that quote, and it's something that is very dear to me, but the beauty of that quote is a good intervention between a leader and a subordinate, or a peer-to-peer intervention. The quality of that intervention is when the subordinate knows that your intention is to help them become better. The intervention loses its quality when the subordinate knows that your intention is to pass blame, or your intention is to criticize because you haven't delivered as a performance tool on the brief of the organization. And you lose your credibility as a leader straight away.
Amazing. That's a great nugget. That's a great nugget, Gary, right? And if I sort of play back, taking blows, letting people figure things out on their own, and the intention behind the intervention, right? We as leaders in our own pressures at times, why would you do that? Instead, somebody has done that. They're competent on their job. Work through with them and help them change their game themselves. I think that's a great nugget, Gary. Amazing. Thank you for that.
I try, Sumit, in my leadership, in all the environments I'm in, I try not to use the word why. So in my line of questioning, I think why is there are two words I don't like in the world. One is why, and the other word is power. I don't like the word power because power is generally abused.
Yeah.
I love the word influence. I think it's a very powerful word, influence. I think
I'm certainly taking away the why with me. I'm going to make sure that I try and get that out of my vocabulary. That's a very good guy.
I just think we have a great opportunity as leaders. First of all, it's a massive responsibility. So you need to use your leadership in a way that is not an abuse of power, that you use your leadership in a way where you can positively influence, and influencing people is not telling them what to do. That's instruction.
Yeah.
But I think if we influence, I think people will thrive in those environments. They will feel like this environment allows my talent to flourish. Instruction is, I'm not sure of your talent, but I'm going to tell you what way you go. Now, that's not to say that you don't create boundaries. I think every human being in the world needs boundaries, but the boundaries are created for the greater good of the group and the greater good of the bigger group. So I think we all need to operate within boundaries, but those are boundaries that are set aside for us all to work in, not just one person. We are teams, we are communities, we are groups of people. We all need to work in with those greater frameworks of boundaries. But within that, we need to be able to get out there and express ourselves.
Excellent. Thank you for that. It's a very interesting question on the chat window, right? Your thoughts as a coach on the leadership style between Dhoni for India and Virat Kohli for RCB. What similarities? What are the differences? How do they influence the dressing room and the outcomes from your vantage point?
Well, let me say that my view is that you can have different types of leadership that can be equally successful. So I like to break leadership into 4 different quadrants. If we had to work in the kind of top quadrant, we would have the kingmaker. Now, the kingmaker is your guy that sees the bigger picture. He's like your CEO. He sees your bigger picture. He's looking at a long-term view. He's got great presence. I saw MS Dhoni as a king. He's fairly consistent in his behaviors. He's not overly emotional. But he's the kind of guy you want to go to war with. He's just got that, he just holds that great presence. Then if that's at the top, at the bottom is your warrior. Now, your warrior, for those of you who watch the movie Braveheart, he's your classic lead from the front. I'll front up against the pressure. Dhoni had a bit of that as well, but I would say Virat Kohli is probably a very strong warrior. He's all bravado, he's all emotion, and come, let's go in a battle together, and I will be right at the front taking on the heat. And those are your warriors. And then on your kind of left-hand quadrant, you've got your lover leader. Your lover is a guy who likes community, he likes to work with people. I'm a little bit more lover than anything else. I like to be leading with other people. It's not about me, it's about us. Generally, your leaders are very humble people. They kind of they don't want to take ownership of the win, or they want to just be part of the group. And then on the other side, you get the magician. Your magician leaders are generally very inconsistent, but what they can do is they can do very special things in performance. I like to think of your magicians as your incredible tech startup leaders, guys that build something, are pioneers in their field. The problem with that is that they can't sustain anything for any length of time. You have to bring in other people to do that for that. And I think every one of those leadership environments can be very successful. The problem with all of them is that they all have a shadow. Every one of them has a shadow. So, the kingmaker, he sees bigger picture. So he probably is maybe not the best on day to day. He's not good on maybe attention to detail. Your warrior leader he's not thinking enough with his brain. He's thinking all with emotion. He believes that you can do everything with emotion and you can win with emotion. Your magician leader, he reckons that just, everything is about doing an incredible thing, and he doesn't stick with something. It's like pioneering. Okay, let's go to the next new invention. And then your lover leader is probably not looking at, he doesn't see a lot of the challenges that are existing in the environment. Because he's always trying to make the environment as nice as possible. So I think they all have shadows. They have strengths, and I think often in environments require slightly different leadership, and recruiters need to understand that.
Yeah, excellent. And as a leader, that's an amazing so lover, magician, warrior, kingmaker. That's an amazing perspective, amazing way to look at it. For you as a leader yourselves, Gary, how did you deal with, and this is a question that has come from 2 or 3 different people in different words. I'm just trying to transcribe it. Were there occasions when you felt that, hey, I myself possibly messed up, and how did you go and deal with the team or with the board, if you will, whether it was the RCB franchise or with the Indian team, or even in your own playing career, of walking up and saying, hey, you know what, this is on me?
I have had spectacular failure in my leadership. I thought for a while I was never going to get fired as a coach, and then it came in nice and hot, because every coach gets fired. So what I've learned to accept, Sumit, is that my leadership style doesn't work in every environment. So what does it make me do? It doesn't make me only look for those environments. It makes me learn and get better at the things that I'm not good at. So I find that I'm in an incredible period in my life of discovery. Discovering who I am as a human being, what makes me tick, where am I good and where am I not good, and what are the areas that I can improve on. And I reckon that if we sometimes throw ourselves out of our comfort zone, that we can improve. If we get ourselves into environments that are not natural to us, we can improve and we can get better in those environments. So it's been a privileged journey of discovery for me, and that's why I love leadership. Is leadership, I think, is often seen as oh, you become a leader because you're the most qualified person in our organization, you know. But I think leadership is so much more detailed than it. It's an art on its own, you know, and often we don't spend enough time on it, I don't think, because you know, they're the nuts and bolts of the business that we need to get to. And, you know, in a sports team, it's the, you know, choosing your captain, you know, oh, the captain must be the best player. Well, no, the captain's not necessarily the best player. You need to have the captain that's the most astute, handles people really well, can deliver big picture, has good attention to detail, is really studious. That's your best captain, especially in short format cricket. So I think we all can continue to learn as leaders.
Is that what keeps you grounded, Gary? I mean, you're a man of many accomplishments. So, you know, I'm sure millions and millions or other billions of people around the planet would want to be in the same shoes as you with that level of achievement. Is this the desire to learn? Is that what keeps you grounded? Is that what keeps you humble? What keeps you connected to your roots?
Yeah, two things. My wife keeps me very grounded. That's the one thing. And then the other thing is I don't journey life through results. I journey life because I want to make a significant impact on people's lives and environments that I work in. So I'm not a slave to winning or losing anymore. And I was a slave to results when I was a player. But I learned as I got older that it's not a very fun place to be when you're a slave to the results. It's not a fun place. And yes, you've got to get the results. Absolutely. And I'm competitive and I want to win. And I want to win every time I go on the field. But if I don't win, even though I've given it my best chance too, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not winning, and I'm okay with taking, you know, the learning. Sport has been an incredible journey in that the beauty about sport is that it's fair competition. You can't guarantee success. And I love that about sport, is that because it teaches you a way of life. You've got to accept the failure as much as you accept the success.
Amazing. Excellent. And you know, that sort of dovetails into something that's been brewing in my head, plus somebody has asked that as well. How do you take all of this and apply it to a player like Sachin Tendulkar, right? One of the most accomplished players of all times in your team, and possibly, like you said, in an environment that is not helping him give his best. And you know, all of us in the tech world, I'm sure that everybody on this call is resonating with when I say this, have that superstar in our team for whom the environment is not as conducive. What do you do as a leader? How do you facilitate that? What is that process? What journey do you go through when you deal with something like that?
Yeah, and again, I think every environment will have those individuals there where they're not thriving in the environment that you've tried to set up. And I always say that's okay, you know, because you're probably not going to get everyone to thrive in that environment. But I think what you do as a leader is you try and give it your best shot at making sure the environment allows the majority of your people to thrive. I'm okay that someone doesn't do well in the environment that I've set up or doesn't get enough opportunity and comes up to me and says, this doesn't work for me, and then goes and does well in another environment. I'm very okay with that. And I think we need to as leaders, because you're not going to land everyone. Not everyone is going to suit your leadership style. So we need to be okay with people moving on and having success elsewhere outside of your leadership environment that you've set up.
Understood. Okay. And in the same way, this is the last question that I'll possibly ask before I start to get Bival back in as well. Last couple of questions. Somebody struggling with their own form, somebody struggling with their own performance, but having the potential, and a high pressure game or a series coming up. What's Gary's decision-making process like? Retain, let go for that series? How do you evolve that process with the player? How do you deal with that?
A lot will depend on the player themselves. I've had a variety of different experiences, but you know, having played the game professionally for 17 years as a batsman, I know the pain that a lot of players go through when they're out of form. And often it's just one more innings to turn it around. But at the same time, it could be that individual out of the environment that helps him as well. So I really need to gauge the individual. But I'd like to share a good example with you. We were playing a test series against England in 2009, and Rahul Dravid was really battling with his form, an accomplished player over many, many years for India. But we had to consider whether we should leave him out the team or not. So I had a discussion with MS and I said, how are we going to deal with this? And we came up with the decision that because Rahul Dravid had been such an accomplished player for India over so many years, that we would leave the decision in his hands. So I knocked on his hotel room, and it was the day before the game, and I said, listen, Rahul, we know that your form hasn't been the greatest, and it's been a tough decision whether we feel we should bring someone else into the team. And MS and I both decided that we would like to leave the decision with you, whether you think you can make a contribution to this test match or not. He had never heard that before in his career, or had an approach like that before in his career. So he was a bit taken back, but he did say, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my view on where my game is. And he made the call. He said, I think I can add value, and I'd like to be picked for the next test. So we picked him, and he got 100 in the test match.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
But I think the learning behind that was the fact that he said that he felt that he should play. He just created accountability for himself, So it was brilliant. It was a great piece of learning for me.
Excellent. A little bit. So we've all heard about the Ahmedabad leg of the IPL. You, Ashish Nehra, Vikram Solanki, possibly teaming up with stuff there. How did that bond with Ashish Nehra form? As a leader, were you more comfortable with certain players? Was that looked at by others as possible favoritism? Who did you regularly have dinner or lunch with the same set of people? There obviously is an interpersonal comfort zone. How did you deal with that in the dressing room, whether it's RCB or whether with the South African team or the Indian team? How do you deal with that? As a leader, every move is watched. Do people look at things as possibly partisan, if you will?
Yeah, listen, I think, first of all, I think it's a great privilege to be offered a position in a franchise. I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm actually looking forward to starting from scratch, because the experiences I've had in IPL have all been in between the big auctions, and you basically are following a system that has been set up already. You can't set up a new system. So I'm excited by that. I think Ashish Nehra, Vikram and myself work together at RCB, and I think we've created some trust in our leadership relationships, which is a good thing. And I think we're all very different as people as well. So I think because of our trust in our relationships, we can challenge each other as leaders. And we have many robust, direct, hard conversations about the benefits of the teams that we work with. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that partnership. I think every leader needs a right-hand man, a second in command that can challenge him and his ways, number one. And number two, can be a shoulder to cry on at the same time. So it's not easy to find those assistants. So I'm hoping that I can be that to Ashish. We've got a good relationship over many, many years. But he knows as well with me, that I'm not going to let him sit lightly, that I'm going to challenge him on all the decisions that he makes. But our relationship is a very trustworthy one. I want the best for him, and hopefully it works well.
I'm sure it would. Your winning mantra, Gary. I know you've spoken about a lot of things, but your one go-to thing which you believe makes you who you are as a leader, not as a professional or as a player yourself, but as a leader.
I just think it's probably 2 words: just be consistent. Be consistent. People need to know what you stand for and who you are, and don't go away from that, even when put under pressure with results. Just be consistent. That's what I try to stick to.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gary. Honestly, it's been a privilege. It's just so amazing to hear your thoughts. Such good, and I'm not patronizing. It's actually wonderful to hear about the leadership traits, behaviors. I'm surely taking a few things away with me, which I'm going to start implementing into my work life from right after this call.
Remember, you're not allowed to ask. Start with the question why. Eh?
Why? Yes, absolutely yes. I'm going to try and never use that ever again. That just stuck with me. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, thank you. It's been such an honor. It's such a privilege and such a joy, to be honest, to share this platform with you. I am sure all of the people around the world who are tuned in have taken away as much as I did from this session. Once again, thank you so much for your time, Gary. Bimal, would like to get you back in on the platform, and over to you.
So Gary, firstly, I don't know what to do. So I have this book lying on my bookshelf which says "Start with Why." I don't know what to do with that book now. Okay,
but that's not the start with the why. Start with the why you set up a business, isn't it? That's the start with why.
Yeah. So there are 2 things I'm going to do. I have a question which I want to ask, and but the other part of my task would also be to summarize your session. That's a ball I'm going to duck, right? So I will not even attempt that ball to try and summarize this session. But see, there's this dimension that, of course, you spoke about of letting people discover their strengths, and it's a journey. And you obviously spoke about, you have to give people time, give them inputs, but let them discover, right? But towards the later part of your conversation, you also spoke about that not everyone is going to get successful in your leadership, right? So what are those 1 or 2 things that will make you decide that it's not going to work with this guy? I mean, obviously you would have done everything that you said, Gary. So what are those 1 or 2 traits which you think it's not going to work? And similarly, what are those 1 or 2 demonstrations that you would want to see in that person that probably he's working? It's probably going to take a little longer with him, but he or she's working on it.
Yeah, I mean, that is a fantastic question, and I'm not sure that I have the complete answer. The one thing I always know is that I'll always be governed by my own personal value system. So I think every leader brings his own value systems to the environment that he works in. So I'll be governed by that. So I think I've made some errors with players in being judgmental as to whether they fit into my environment or not too early. And then on the other side, I think I've also left players too long in the environment where they've become toxic in the space. And I think it's a challenge that we have, for any environment or community or group of people. So what I try and default to is patience. I try and give that person every opportunity to thrive in my environment. But then if I'm pushed into a corner and the player is starting to really put me under pressure with who he is and the impact that he's having on the group of people that I'm leading, if I'm pushed into that corner, I'll default to my value system. And if he goes against that, in other words, what would an example be? If he transgressed on the way he spoke to one of his teammates, or if he transgressed on a comment that he would make in a warm-up game or something like that, things that would not be constructive to our environment, I would jump in quite quickly on that guy. So I would judge on the value system rather than whether I think that this guy can play or not. But I would always allow for 1 or 2 errors. I'd allow for 1 or 2 mistakes that the player would make in the environment. But if he was a serial offender and I'd already had a conversation with them, he's going to do more damage than good.
Super. And we are at 170 for 7 right now, Gary. So
game on.
Game on. Yeah. So I'm sure everyone wants to know your view. If you were to pick up a team for this match.
Well, I can tell you something now. That is, I actually thought that India would get a 250 lead, and I think a 250 lead would be a long way to go. But chasing 200 or even 220 is very gettable. And also, I think what people don't understand is that we've got the kind of players are used to playing on our surfaces. So they, the Dean Elgar knock in the last game is a classic. One of our guys is capable of that. And it might even be an Adam Markram this time who hasn't fired yet. It might be a Van der Dussen. But we are used to playing on very uneven surfaces, typical to the one that's there at the moment. So I think it could be a really interesting game. And saying that, I thought the Indians bowled superbly in the first innings.
Yeah. No, on that note, Gary, like I said, I'm going to duck the ball of trying to summarize this session. I'm really not going to attempt that ball. But I do want to thank both you and Sumit. I mean, like I said in my opening comment, I don't think we could have asked for a better session from a construct of event perspective. And I don't think, Sumit, the way you executed the session, we could have executed it as well. So thank you very much, Gary, for joining us. And Sumit, you really did justice to the last session. So thank you very much, Sumit and Gary.